So good afternoon, everybody. We're very excited to have you all here for this panel. And the three of us today are all representatives of CSA programs that operate in Massachusetts. So we have Christine Hawergi, who is the Director of Community Relations in Inversant, and Inversant is operating a program in Chelsea. We have Sasha Abby van der Zee, who is a Senior Program Manager for Boston Saves. It's a CSA program operated by Boston Public Schools. And my name is Daphne Gluck. I am Director of Program Evaluation for the Office of Economic Empowerment. We're part of the State Treasurer's Office, and we run the Baby Steps program, which is the statewide CSA program. The title of this panel is Let's Talk About Children's Savings Account and Lessons Learned. And I think before we dive into the presentations from each of our programs, it would be helpful to just give a little short background on what are children's savings accounts. So children's savings accounts, or CSAs, are commonly referred to as, and as I will refer to them from now on, are savings accounts that are used for the purpose of accumulating money for children's post-secondary education within a framework that incentivizes families to open accounts or contribute funds to these accounts. CSA programs usually offer a seed amount to incentivize the opening of the account, and that's usually for programs that are opt-in programs where families have to open an account or enroll, or they will provide a seed amount to start the saving process in cases where families don't have to actually enroll or open accounts. And these are opt-out programs. And CSA programs will often include additional savings matches or behavioral incentives, and they might also include related components such as financial education or coaching and mentoring and other similar types of components. And the underlying goal of CSA programs is asset building, getting more families to have more funds saved under the assumptions that assets improve the well-being of low-income families. But research into CSA programs has shown that they can have a positive outcome even when the asset itself is quite small. The most prominent and quoted finding around CSAs is that low-income children with as much as $500 or even less are 3 times more likely to attend or to enroll in college and 4 times more likely to complete college. And that's a staggering finding. There are additional findings related to social and emotional development, educational achievement, and even health outcomes. And so these programs are quite popular, and with this sort of evidence attached, it's really no wonder that they are really gaining in popularity. A study by Prosperity Now found that by the end of 2020, there were 109 CSA programs operating in the country and serving over 900,000 children. And this is just the start. We know of programs that launched this year, and we know of programs that will launch in the future. So it's just a growing field. However, CSA programs can differ dramatically from each other. So they can be opt-in or opt-out, as I mentioned, but they also vary in terms of their eligibility, age and income eligibility requirements or geographic residence. They also will vary in their various components, as like whether they have matchings, whether they have incentives or other components. And they can also vary in their mechanisms, and most notably in the types of accounts that are used in order to operate the savings. And this is sort of what we're going to focus on today. And first, we'll start with Christine, who will talk about Inversant, the program, and their savings account.
Yes, thank you, Daphne. And before I dive into some details about Inversant, I just want to take a moment to thank Midas Collaborative and all of its sponsors for hosting this hybrid virtual in-person event, this conference, which I've been attending virtually, and I've been so impressed with all of the speakers and conversations. So very happy to be here talking about CSAs. Inversant, for those who may not know, is a program. It's a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2009 in Boston. And as I talk about Inversant and our programming and what we've learned, I'm going to be talking in 2 time periods: pre-pandemic and then since the pandemic, because it's had a lot of dramatic effects on our work. So I'll give a short history. For the first 10 years of Inversant's life, it operated learning and savings programs for parents of high school students in 5 school districts in Eastern Mass. That was Boston, Chelsea, Lynn, Revere, and Salem. And Inversant has been a bit different from a lot of other college access and success nonprofits in that it worked directly with parents of current high school students to help them learn and acquire skills and assets and understanding to navigate the whole US higher education application and enrollment and financial aid process, which for those of us who've been through it, we know it's a gamut of complicated options and choices and forms to fill out. And there's a lot to know with the extremely high cost of higher education. A lot of low to moderate income families may assume that higher education is just out of reach when they see the tuition sticker price. And one of the things that we have worked with families on is understanding that there are ways to reduce what you pay for school. There are ways to increase the age you qualify for. It includes things as taking college prep type coursework in high school, taking AP credit, taking early college classes if you have the opportunity, engaging in extracurriculars or work experience, really being very diligent students, and all of the things that go into creating a competitive admissions application. But in addition to that, there's so much to know about how to pay for college and the various ways you can do it. And that's even before talking about loans. And then that's a whole nother ball game too. But we have worked primarily with families over the first 10 years of Inversant's existence who are getting ready to send the very first person in their family off to college. And that could be a 2-year program, a 4-year program, a 1-year certificate program. It's any kind of post-secondary education, public, private, in-state, out-of-state, you name it. I mean, we talk about all of that. And one of the things we really try to impress is that there is no one right way to do this. There's no one choice to make. There are many, many ways to get onto and through a higher education journey. In the case of Inversant's first 10 years, that journey was really focused on students who were going to graduate from high school and then enroll in higher education programs. That's not exclusively the case anymore, but for the history, that's the majority of our history. That's the kind of work we've been doing, is working with parents to coach their kids to in addition to coaching the kids about going to school and understanding what their options are and the pathways to pursuing higher education. The savings piece, which is of course why we're all here today, is definitely a major component of Inversant programming. And so as Daphna mentioned, we know from research that with as much or as little as $500 in a savings account, college going identity is strengthened. The likelihood that someone will enroll in a higher education program increases. Their persistence through to completion of that program is also correlated with having a savings account. And we're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars to cover tuition. We're talking about having, if you want to call it, an emergency fund that is there in case, as we've heard from so many of the different speakers today, things that can happen to derail your plans, your source of transportation breaking down or otherwise becoming inaccessible, a medical situation, either with a student or someone in their family, housing insecurity. There's so many things that can happen over the course of a student's career that can potentially derail their success and graduation. So we really help families understand that having this asset, this financial asset, will increase the likelihood of the student acquiring a degree or a certificate, which is another form of an asset. And it's one that they will take with them everywhere. They can never lose it once they've earned it. And that, of course, is very much related to higher income opportunities after graduation. So yes, we definitely focus on savings, and the way we have done it has changed from time to time and program location to program location. We have looked at 529 plans. We have experimented with that. We've also looked at custodial savings accounts, and we've looked at individually owned savings accounts. And many of our families had, previous to being enrolled in Inversant programming, underbanked or unbanked. So opening a savings account was something we explained how to do, and we have had a wonderful credit union partner that has worked with us for the past 12 years and has really helped us bring savings accounts to our families, in many cases for the very first time. I'll stop there and we can talk more about specifics once we get all the intros out of the way.
Thanks, Christine. This is very compelling, and just the thought about like the things that can derail the college education is such an important point. Sasha, we'll move over to you to talk about Boston Saves.
And I'll unmute. As Daphne said before, I run the Boston Saves program. It's a collaboration between the City of Boston, where I work within the Office of Financial Empowerment, and Boston Public Schools. So it started, we're in our third full year of the program, the full rollout, and every kindergarten student in Boston Public Schools, we open a CSA for them. We open a $50 CSA. It is an opt-out program. You never have to do anything. And when you graduate from high school, you can let us know you've graduated, and you send the $50 to either a college or a career prep program in your name. If you opt in and you log into the program, then there's the opportunity for families to earn more incentives for their children. And like I said, we're in the third full year. So right now, all kindergarten, first and second graders in Boston Public Schools have a Boston Saves account. We did 3 years of a pilot program where it's about 1,400 students. Those students are now in third, fourth, and fifth grade. And it was across 11 different schools in BPS to kind of make sure we knew what we were doing before we moved to all 81 schools that have a kindergarten. In total, there'll be about 12,000 students this year that are eligible for the program. And every year we're anticipating adding another 3,000 to 4,000 students for the new kindergartners. The way that the program is designed is families can log into the system, and similar to Inversant, they can link an account, right? So they can link a 529, they can link a savings account, a checking account. We've looked at a lot of different options, and based on during the pilot, there was a lot of focus groups, and families told us what they wanted, and they wanted to be able to bank at a place that felt familiar to them, and a place that was in their neighborhood, they could easily get to, whether they already had a bank account or they knew someone who had a bank account there. And it felt comfortable, where people spoke the language that they spoke. In Boston Public Schools, students and families speak 72 different languages. So we translate everything into the top 10 most spoken languages when we send out information. Doesn't get everybody, but it does get the good majority. And banks are similar, right? So if they have someone who speaks Haitian Creole on staff, you're more likely to attract a clientele that speaks Haitian Creole. So we listen to that, and so we offer them the opportunity to link any of their private accounts. And And we do talk to them about what the different accounts are, and we connect with MIFA so they can talk about 529s and kind of give people the information and then allow them to make the choice. And once they link the account, they would earn an incentive. They would earn a $25 incentive in their child's Boston Saves account. So it's kind of like two trains running parallel to each other. The Boston Saves account, they can't touch until the child graduates from high school, but it's where all the incentives go. And then their personal account is what they would need to link in order to earn more incentives. And they can take money in and out of that as needed for any emergency or, we just had a pandemic, still in a pandemic. And so families, that was important to families to be able to have access to the money that they were saving, while also knowing that they could build up the Boston Saves account as possible. So you earn incentives by linking an account. Once you link an account, you can earn savings incentives. So if you're able to save $25 within a quarter, then we'll put $5 in the Boston Saves account. And that incentive runs from kindergarten through 12th grade. And then from kindergarten to 3rd grade, the most popular incentive of the last year has been the reading incentive. So if you're reading with your child and actively helping them to learn new things, and let us know by logging into the portal and on the honor system, letting us know that you've done that, then we put another $5 in their account. So they can earn $20 a year for saving, $20 a year for reading. And there's also a financial checkup option where families that are Boston Saves eligible can work with our staff within the Office of Financial Empowerment and get a soft pull on their credit, kind of learn what does their finances look like, and what's the best way to pay down debt, what's the best way to use tax money that comes back. We currently have an additional incentive with the Economic Mobility Lab through the city, where because there's the child tax credit, where every family that has a child under the age of 17 is getting an additional amount of money per month as long as you're income eligible. And you don't have to file taxes in order to get it. So a lot of low income families didn't get the original stimulus, but they are eligible for the CTC. And the Economic Mobility Lab put together an additional incentive. So if families were able to save that original $25, they would get $5 from us. And if they were able to use some of that child tax credit money and save an additional $25 in their linked account, they would give a $25 match into the child savings account. So instead of earning $25 for saving, or $5 for saving 25, you'd earn $30 for saving 50. And they're doing it this July to September, and then October to December. So there's 2 opportunities for families to earn that. So we've been telling families about that. And then we've been thinking about our oldest families right now only have 5th graders. So what happens in a couple of years when we get high school students? Right now, we've only been reaching out to families to give them the information. And we get that information through an NDA with Boston Public Schools, where they're able to pass along the information to us. But eventually, we'll have 9th graders. And maybe their families have never logged in, so they only have the $50. So we've been thinking ahead and kind of thinking about how do we get those middle school or high school students who will eventually have accounts with us, how do we get them involved and let them know what's going on so that they can help save for their own future. Just going to think about if there's anything else. I think that's kind of the basics of Boston Saves. The pilot program really gave us the opportunity to have these focus groups, and that's how we determined a lot of how the program started. And Gosha is on the call, and she was me before I was me. And so she really got the ball rolling on a lot of this, and now it's our turn to kind of figure out how to get more people involved and tell more families about it. So like I said, we use the 10 different languages we send things out in and translate them. We also offer families to open a custodial account with our credit union. So if you don't have a social security number as an adult, or you don't want to have an account that adds to your monthly balance of how much money you have because you're afraid it will affect your state benefits, then that would allow you to open an account that's held by the Boston Educational Development Fund, which is like the nonprofit arm of Boston Public Schools. And we use family champions to kind of get the word out, which are paid through gift cards, so that all families have the opportunity to participate in that. But I can get more into the weeds if people have questions after we all kind of introduce ourselves and our programs. Daphna, you're up.
Thanks, Sasha. So I'll talk a bit about Baby Steps. As I mentioned, Baby Steps is the statewide program, CSA program for Massachusetts. The program provides $50, a $50 seed for families to open a 529 savings account for their children and sort of jumpstart their journey to save for post-secondary education. And all children who were born or adopted in Massachusetts starting in January 1st, 2020 are eligible, but they have to open the account within a year of birth. So it's definitely an opt-in program, and there's a time limit to when you can opt into the program. And Baby Steps has 3 stated goals. I think it's important to go over these goals to understand the characteristics and the components of this program and how it's different from the other programs that you just heard about. So the first goal is to increase the percentage of families saving for higher education in Massachusetts. Second goal is to build a culture centered on saving for the future and employing prudent budget management. And that refers to a financial education component that we have in the program. And the third goal is to boost post-secondary enrollment and graduation rates for Massachusetts students by fostering aspirations for higher education. And you can see from the goals that the program is very much focused on building saving behavior through the use of incentives and financial education. And there are several basic characteristics to Baby Steps as a statewide program that are important also to understand what's the program like. And the first and foremost, as a universal statewide program, the annual population for eligible babies or children is between 65,000 and 70,000 babies, which is the number of births in Massachusetts. It sort of went down, but this year it seems like it's going slightly up. So we might reach like 68 or 69,000 babies. And so it's a big population and it's spread out throughout the state. And at the moment we have about 11,347, not about, but 11,347 accounts that were funded for babies that were born in 2020 and 2021, and a few babies or a few children that were also adopted. And the number will continue to grow. And in fact, we are seeing that the account open rate is increasing. So if we sort of compare 2020 babies at the same point in time with 2021 babies, we see that there is an increase. And we expect that increase to continue to grow. So that's one thing that we think about. The other thing is that our population is very diverse. So because these are all babies born in Massachusetts, we have diverse income levels, geographic residence, race, ethnicity, immigration status, we have everything. And so the program really has to apply to everybody and to be accessible as much as possible to all of these people. It's also an anonymous program in the sense that we don't know who these people are who are having babies. We don't have direct access to them. And so this is one of the things that we have to address and we have to solve when we try to get people to enroll to the program. And finally, the program is operated by the Office of Economic Empowerment in partnership with MIFA, who Sasha just mentioned, who is the authority that sort of manages the 529 accounts. And we are both very small staff. And so a small staff based in Boston on a population of, say, 68,000 babies a year all through the state, it's not really possible for us to have direct high-touch contact with all of these families. And so we're looking at different ways to operate this program. So what are the implications? It's limited capacity. So the program has to be simple to administer. It can't be complex. We can't deal with a variety of different incentives where people have to prove various behaviors. We can't deal with or it would be very difficult for us to deal with a variety of different accounts. And that's why it's a very, very simple, universal program. One incentive, one account. And at the same time, being this way, it also allows us some flexibility. So the sort of basic structure will also allow flexibility if we want to add components in the future. It will be easier to add a component when you have the baseline be quite simple. Second thing is that most of our effort is getting people to enroll in the program, first and foremost. And when we do that, we have to take into account the diversity. We have to also translate our materials into different languages. We have to find innovative ways to get our material into various different places. So we have a clearinghouse where organizations can order material and distribute it to their communities. And we have to work a lot with community partnerships with those organizations that work directly and closely with families in order to get them sort of to do the work for us and to get the families and to get them enrolled, and then also give us back feedback on what's working, what's not working, what needs to be improved. And so having said all that, I sort of lay down sort of the basics to talk about the 529 account. What is the 529 account and why are we using the 529 account? And I assume that at least part, or if not all of you know about these accounts, but I'll just swiftly go through some of its features, some of its like advantages and disadvantages. And it's a complex tool for savings, but it has a lot of benefits as well. So 529 accounts are basically a mechanism to save for post-secondary education, and that includes any university or college that are accredited, and it also includes 2-year associate degree programs or trade school and vocational schools. So the variety is quite large. But as it is, the funds that are saved in these accounts can only be used for these purposes. And if you use the funds for other purposes, you will suffer some sort of a penalty. And the main advantage of these accounts is, first and foremost, is that they have significant tax benefits. So the interest that you earn on these accounts is tax-free from the federal taxes. And actually 529 is the article in the tax code that sort of establishes these accounts, but there are also benefits on the state level. So you can deduct a certain amount of your contribution from your state taxes. And another thing that I would say is somewhat of an advantage is that it's a state-sponsored program. And so you have a certain amount of, it's not assurance that your money will stay the same because the market is the market, but there's some sort of an assurance and there's some sort of a confidence that you can get knowing that this program is administered by the state and guaranteed to a certain extent. And so if I just move forward, I talked about the tax benefits, and these benefits and this characteristic of the 529 actually made it very attractive to higher income people and not very attractive to lower income people. And all data shows that these accounts are utilized quite well by higher income populations. And so I think in Massachusetts it's true. I think it's true in other places as well. And Gosha is really the one to talk about it, but states are looking into ways to making these accounts more attractive to lower income people as well. There are many ways that you can do that, like, well, these accounts also don't have management fees, so that makes them attractive. You can try to reduce the, for instance, in Massachusetts, the contributions can be as low as $5 and you don't have to contribute when you open a baby steps account. And some states are looking into even more innovative things, such as creating some sort of a liquid saving pocket that's under research by Commonwealth, by Gosha and her team. So there are all sorts of initiatives to make these accounts more accessible. And I think that's because as an account that is dedicated for post-secondary savings, that is also a benefit. So if we're looking at CSA programs as programs that's supposed to sponsor or to encourage aspirations for college going, the dedicated characteristic of these accounts is inherent into this aspiration. So you know that you're saving for something that will have to go to your college education, that most likely will not be used for other purposes even though it might be difficult for families to do that and to save just for the college education and not be able to use their funds for other purposes. And so I think for programs, for statewide programs in particular, using 529 accounts seems sort of like the natural avenue to go to. These are many of the, it's not this way in our case, just because of structural, the way things are structured, but in many states, the government agency or authority that manages 529 accounts are treasuries, who usually also create the CSA program. So it's also the same sort of entity that operates the two programs, and therefore they will use their own program. There are many advantages related to data and to the ability to track things around the 529 because it's a single program and because it's state run. And all of these make them quite advantageous. At the same time, as I mentioned, there are significant disadvantages. I think the central one is accessibility. And when I say accessibility, I mean it in two levels. First of all, in Massachusetts, 529s are financially managed by Fidelity Investments. It's a large financial institution. I think many people can feel very intimidated by approaching this institution and opening an account there. Sasha mentioned that their focus groups showed them that people want to open accounts in places where they feel comfortable, where they know their banker. It will not be this way with Fidelity Investments. They have, I think, only 2 branches where you can actually open a 529 account, so you have to do it online. So it might feel a bit distant. And also the account opening process can be daunting, especially if you don't have a lot of experience opening savings accounts and working with savings accounts. And specifically, there might be language issues. The process is in English, and there might also be, but we know that there's also an issue because you have to choose your investment plan, and that's a difficult choice for people to make. So for us, the way that we try to mitigate is by offering as much support as we can through the Office of Economic Empowerment, through MIFA, working with our community partners and trying to get as much information out there. So we will do trainings to our community partners. We will offer them as many resources as we can so that they will be able to talk to families as much as possible to assuage any fears and any problems that they might have in the process of opening an account. And by doing that, I think it'll also result in being recruited in an effective way into the program, or at least that's what I hope. I think there are other things that can be addressed in this issue, but we might move into asking each other questions. And so I don't know, Christine, do you want to start with yours, or do you want me to start?
Please go ahead with any question like you'd like to kick us off with.
Yeah, so we'll start with questions between us, and then if anyone in the audience has additional questions, we're happy to answer those as well. But my question was for both you, Christine and Sasha, if you can talk about the feedback that you got from families after programs were opened about, the questions they had around opening these accounts, linking these accounts, the fears that they may have around them.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that was a really good in-depth, but still high level enough overview of savings accounts, children's savings accounts, and 529 plans. This is a very exciting time to be working in this space because CSAs and 529s are still somewhat of a newer growing tool, but so there's lots of things to be learned, and I'm so happy that Boston has their plan, and then there's the Massachusetts plan, and we're seeing some neighboring states and other cities within Massachusetts looking into this. So the amount of learning that we're going to all enjoy is it's going to be just keep on coming, and it's going to make all of us better in what we're doing. As far as Inversant goes, we have served low to moderate income families, and that is we're a mission-based organization. We're a totally opt-in. We operated in cities and towns with high poverty rates, and we entered those towns with our programming by way of trusted partners. So after school programs that families have been sending their children to, that they know them, they trust them, they know where to find them, who to talk to there. Also in high school. So we delivered for 10 years in person, 2 hours in the evening over dinner, large group workshops with Inversant facilitators who were teaching topics like GPA and types of higher education institutions, and for certain career aspirations, what types of programs would make sense to look at, and how to understand your financial aid award letter, all of the tactical things that go into preparing to be a college student. And we were able to do that. We were able to recruit families because they were parents of children in those particular schools or in those particular after-school programs. So, a small organization with a strange name that is really a combination of 2 words, invest in conversant. Conversant really doesn't mean anything in English. So how did we establish ourselves? Yes, how do we establish ourselves in these different cities? Well, we partnered up with people that already had the trust and familiarity of parents there. The thing about the savings, the feedback we've been hearing from our families over the years is completely in line with what you and Sasha have mentioned. For the low-income families, the ability to have a physical branch with human beings that they knew and know them was very important and highly correlated to willingness to open an account. The ability to make deposits into those accounts in cash or with money orders was also extremely important. Our families were not going to make, automatic deposits that they would set up through iBanking or, with a direct deposit. It was very deliberate and in person and with hard currency. So that was one thing that did prove to be a challenge with our families that we enrolled in 529 plans. It was, the 529 plans, which are great and they're so good for so many reasons. For people who are previously unbanked or underbanked, definitely a big learning curve, and the aspect of the complexity of the application process or the enrollment process, we found simpler is better. The less information that our families were asked for, whether about themselves or their children, from social security numbers to whatever, any kind of information, ID cards, if we can make it simple or simpler, we're going to see account openings rise. What else? I think that was pretty. Oh, the thing about the tax benefit, you're right. Our families, I'll just spit out a quick some data behind them. 45% of Inversant families have had annual income less than $30,000, and another 30% have income between $30,000 and $50,000. So these households are not really going to enjoy the tax benefit of a more affluent family. So that was not a factor. It was not like a positive draw for them because it was kind of irrelevant. The other thing I want to say that was huge was the ability to access the account. We had, as I mentioned earlier, both custodial accounts and then individually owned accounts. The custodial accounts The cool thing about them from a program administration perspective is that those the savings and then the incentives and the matches to savings that Inversant provided, those were restricted in use. They could only be withdrawn for qualified educational expenses. And there was a request application approval process, so there was a time lag. There was, you have to have receipts showing what these funds are going to be used for. But at the same time, we knew, and the administrators of those particular programs knew that the money was going for education. When it came to individual accounts, families knew that they had access. They could withdraw funds without penalty for whatever reason. And when the pandemic started, we contacted everybody that was currently enrolled and had been previously enrolled with Inversant over the years. And we said that, we understand this is an emergency situation. If you need to withdraw your funds, that's okay. You don't have to tell us what it's for. You don't have to ask anybody for permission. You know what's best for you. Don't worry about it. And then we extended the deadline by which they could continue saving and then receive a match. I failed to mention, we made a match on the first $1,500 at the time of a child's graduation from high school. So parents had up to 4 years. They could enroll in 9th grade or later, but up to 4 years to save a target of $1,500. And then Inversant would match that dollar for dollar. What we saw when the pandemic started was that families appreciated that vote of confidence, reminder that they have savings, but they did not take withdrawals. They, for the most part, stayed the course on, we are still sending our child to college. This is for them. That's what we noticed. So, and even before the pandemic, when we had done some analysis of our families' banking activity, we saw that the absence of a penalty it wasn't correlated with a lot of early withdrawals or frequent withdrawals. There was just a really small, less than 10%, 6% off the top of my head, rate of withdrawals. But those families did resume making deposits, and they continued on their path to reaching their 4-year savings goal. So on the flip side, when we did see account structures where there were penalties for withdrawing funds for other than educational purposes, that was correlated with a higher dropout rate from families in our program. So the 10 years of data has been very consistent in that respect, that it's, access is important. And, I don't have to say anything more. I mean, it's the numbers are speaking for themselves.
I'll jump in. So families have told us similarly that they want to be able to go to a bank that they know and trust. But a lot of them were underbanked or unbanked totally. So we work pretty closely with the Bank on Boston officer within this Office of Financial Empowerment, and Michael can help people, kind of creates a list of all of the non-predatory lenders. So banking options where people can go in and not have to have a certain amount of money in their bank account without getting a fee, or the ones that don't have large, like if you go below a certain amount, then you get a fee. If you have an overdraft, you get a fee, like all the fee-based structures. And he has been working pretty hard to add more bank on partners that kind of promise that they have at least one option for people within their kind of menu of different types of savings and checking accounts that you can create. And so we share those with families and kind of help them figure out which is the best one for them based on where they live and what they're looking for. We also kind of try and build trust within the community. We have a much smaller population, and it's kind of targeted to these Boston Public School students. But there's 81 schools we're working with. So we have gotten funding from a local bank to hire family champions within half of the schools. And so we hire about 40 family champions. They're like ambassadors that we train about Boston Saves, and then we kind of set them loose in their communities. And we specifically choose schools that have higher rates of students that are eligible. So some schools only have a single strand. So this year they would have 3 classrooms worth of students. And some schools have 5 classrooms per grade. So they would have 15 classrooms that were eligible. So the schools with the larger numbers of eligible students are eligible for a family champion. Schools that have a higher opportunity index number, which is a number that Boston uses to determine need. So a 0 is no need in a school, and a 1 is every student in the school has some sort of need. And this year, every school that's a 0.6 or above was offered a family champion. And we also looked at the neighborhoods of Boston to make sure that we had family champions across the whole city and not just in one targeted location. And then we're now hiring and training them for this school year. We'll also hire, based on the data from last year, we know that certain populations that spoke certain languages were much less likely to take advantage of the program and to log in. So after the first year, the login rate, which is really the only way you can earn additional incentives, was 9%. We raised it to 23% after the second year, at the end of the second year, and our goal this year is to get up to 30%. It's kind of an odd program where I literally just want to give money away to people. I'm like, please let me give you some money. Let me help you earn incentives, which is wonderful. But we're hiring a couple of specific language family champions. So they won't be for a particular school. We already have a number of family champions that are bilingual in English and Spanish, which is wonderful. But this year we're looking at hiring a Haitian Creole and a Cape Verde Creole family champion. And they will not only get the word out in their community, but also be available to other family champions that might not speak those languages, but they have a population in their school that does. So they would be able to help with some outreach there. So we're hoping to kind of increase the numbers of those families. We saw last year that there was one school that has a primarily Cantonese and Mandarin focused school population, and the family champion spoke English, Cantonese, and Mandarin, was able to increase population up to, from like 11%, which was already above the average, to 40% participation across the board. And she was able to post things where people would see them, and then literally would get on the phone with people and walk them through the process of logging in. And she did an awesome job. So we're hoping to kind of replicate that with other languages. And if it works, we'll continue doing it with more. And one other area that we heard from some families that they didn't think that this was meant for their child. Their child had significant special education, disability needs, and they weren't sure their child was going to go to college or do a career training program. And through a lot of research, we said it is for your child, and we were able to figure out that if they open an ABLE account, which is basically the state's version of a 529 for like up to age 26 that have a disability, then if they open the ABLE account and they earn money in their Boston Saves account, they can link that ABLE account to their Boston Saves account, and then we can add whatever money they've earned into their ABLE account at the end. And that ABLE account is able to pay for, not like a 529 can only pay for college or career specific things, and this can pay for housing or needs that are needed by that particular student, or I guess they would be a graduate by then. So that was really good. And so we're working on a way to kind of get that information out to all of the families through like the special ed parent activity, or SPED PAC. I don't know what it is in Boston, what that stands for, but kind of the parents of special ed students in the special ed department. So that will happen. Next on my list is to figure out how to get all of the homeless and students in foster care that might have had different parents and guardians listed, and kind of make sure that they don't fall through the cracks.